What's up, guys? So today I'm making a video because I had recently made a post on Instagram, I'll throw that in here, and it was discussing something about exercising every day and how I like to start every day like that. But one of the things I had mentioned is that I've been doing this for a long time, obviously, and not a lot changes physically, but I will still continue to do this year after year, and it's something that is always going to be a part of my life, even if I'm not physically progressing in one area or another. It's a huge part of my life and always will be. But on the last podcast, or maybe 2 podcasts ago, somebody had mentioned that they had wished that I had ended it talking about my goals. I think it was with Jeffrey Verdi Schofield, Natural Hypertrophy, and Abel. And all of us were talking at the end about what we're doing next. And I just kind of ended the podcast there without really getting into what I am doing now. So I thought I wanted to touch on that a little bit because some people do ask me what I'm trying to do with training, where I'm at. And if you've seen many episodes of the podcast, you've seen me talk in these individual videos, you know that after 18 or so years of training, I'm now 31, almost 32, and I've been lifting since I was about 14. Lifting seriously since I was about 14. I mean, I started with some small stuff since I was 12, and I've been doing athletics my whole life. So, you know, it's a long time in the game and not a lot changes. So what keeps me going to still want to be training? And as I mentioned, it's something I just enjoy. It's also got a lot of health benefits. It's also got a lot of psychological benefits. So it's not really something I really have to think about. That is something I try to impart on clients of mine as well, is that after you're doing this for a long time, it becomes something that is just like your daily routine. I don't really think about it. It's just something I do. But it's still helpful to have things to motivate you forward so that you don't just get completely bored, because boredom is a big reason people will stop doing certain physical activities. So today, I'm going to talk about what I am currently trying to do as I gain weight. So most of the time for the last few years, I've kind of stuck around the same weight. And if you saw my experiment with Steve Hall, we had basically doubled my volume, maybe even a little bit more for certain things, and nothing really changed. So I looked at pictures of me at 195, I had cut down to about 180, and then I started working with Steve. And the whole question was, what's gonna happen once I get back up to 195? And unfortunately, not a lot did happen. And people have since said that they would like to see me coached by Jeffrey Verdi Schofield, probably in large part because he's had some amazing progress in the last few years. But it's not that I don't try for progress. Every time I go to the gym, I still try to progress on certain things. I just try to be realistic about what is possible at this stage in the game and not get too tied to the results, but more the process. However, it has been a long time since I've been above 200 pounds. I stand by the fact that to this day, I would say if I was really going to try to gain every ounce of muscle possible, if somebody said, is there any way you could gain any more? I'd say what I would do, health aside, what I would do would be to slowly bulk up to probably 230, because the heaviest I've ever been was 220. I would slowly, over 2 years, bulk up to 230, hold that for a while, get as strong as possible in the moderate rep ranges, right? And then I would slowly cut back down and hope that when I got back down to the similar leanness, maybe I would be 197 or something instead of 195. Now, I actually did do that many years ago. I bulked up to 220. That was that heaviest point of my life. By the time I got back down, I didn't really net a lot. However, I stand by the fact that I think that is what is responsible for most people's gains. Even the people who these days talk about being leaner most of the time, they have had a period of their training where they had bulked up. I think that's a big reason why we are seeing progress with somebody like Jeffrey Verdi Schofield, even though he's closing in on 10 years. Steve Hall, amazing progress in the last few years, and a big part of that, I believe, was that he bulked up to the heaviest weights possible. Abel's talked about that. There's a lot of talk about that. I do think you have to push your body out of homeostasis, which is another thing we're going to be talking about it. So I do not plan to actually go to 230. That is just theoretically what I would do if you said health aside and you had to do everything possible. However, I don't actually believe that at this point it would really be beneficial to me. I don't think I would actually see net progress, and I think there would actually potentially be health issues by doing that. However, I am curious to see if I can get above 17-inch arms again, because at one point I had about 17.25, maybe a little bit more, closer to 17.5-inch arms when I was 220. Now, obviously, plenty of that is fat. It's definitely a softer look, so I'm not saying that it would be gaining tons of muscle. However, it's been a while since I've had above 17-inch arms. Usually, most of the time, I'm about 16.5. Right now, I'm about 16.75. So sitting at about 195, I would like to see, can I push up to about 200, maybe low 200s, and hit 17 plus? Now, the reality is there's not really a question of can I hit 17 plus inch arms again, because frankly, I could gain 0 pounds of muscle and just keep gaining weight and eventually have 18-inch arms, right? Obviously, fat accumulates around there. So that's why I always say, when you're comparing, you have to compare to the same weight, meaning, hey, I was 200 pounds this year, I'm 200 pounds the next year. Am I a leaner, more muscular version? Or the same body fat. Hey, I was 11% body fat, now I'm 11% body fat again, but I'm 2 pounds heavier. You have to have one of those constant. If you're just saying I'm just generally bigger and you're not measuring some of these things, I don't think it's as reliable, or going by strength gains is another way. So I know I will be able to, but can I do it at about 200 pounds? Because that's roughly where I had them before, where I think I had to be about 205 to have 17-inch arms, and I will verify this with my records. As you probably know, I keep tons of records on everything. And I wanna see, can I get 17-inch arms at 200 pounds? I'd be pretty happy with that. So how am I actually doing that? Well, not a lot is going to be that different. For the most part, I am a huge advocate for progressive overload in the moderate rep ranges with the appropriate exercises, right? For something like calves or biceps, it's probably not gonna be that dramatically different because the function is fairly straightforward. Whereas for back and sometimes legs, we see these things where people will be training for years and then they change something in their back training and all of a sudden they are seeing progress because there's obviously a lot of muscles that make up the quote unquote back, and there are a lot of different things that you can do technique-wise to change it. So for me, we're talking arms here. Obviously, I want everything to grow, but what am I doing? I'm mostly adding volume and exercises that I know work for me. So the supinating dumbbell curl has always been a mainstay for me for many, many years. That is something I'm gonna be adding. The incline dumbbell curl is something I'm gonna be adding more of. I'm going to be basically going from 6 to 8 sets per week for biceps and triceps, up to about 12 sets per week for biceps and triceps. Nothing crazy, because I don't believe that just huge amounts of volume and more volume is the answer. As I mentioned with my experiment with Steve Hall, I think he's an amazing coach, but when we doubled my volume, we didn't really see much. I don't think it's a matter of just more and more volume. I think it has to be volume, frequency, intensity, and the right exercises for you. If anything, if you imagine two twins who have both been lifting for 10 years and they've both been doing 10 sets of, let's say, 2 main bicep exercises, and you said, okay, they're kind of stalled out for a long time, twin A is going to add a new bicep variation, even though I said already biceps aren't going to be that variable, but even in that case, they add a new exercise versus the other one just increases by 20% volume, so they add 2 sets. I think person A is more likely to see some new growth because maybe they're hitting the muscle in a different way. We see this with hamstrings, right? If you were hammering seated leg curls, right, you're gonna get more of a stretch, so that's great, but maybe if you go to lying leg curls, you're gonna get more of the sartorius muscle. So that's just something that maybe never would have hit. Now, you could argue with enough volume, everything there is gonna get hit, but I do think exercise selection is really important, and once you've gotten sufficient volume, it's really important to have the right exercises for you. So I'm going to be increasing that amount, and with triceps, I'm kind of limited with what I can do from home, so at the gym, I'll be doing a little bit more. I actually like close grip push-ups. That's something I've been doing a little bit more of. And again, basic extensions, nothing too crazy there, but I am interested to see if I can hit this goal of 17+ inch arms that's unpumped, okay, but flexed at 200 pounds. 2 final points I wanna make here are some of the things that I've noticed that shouldn't be too surprising if you've been lifting for a long time, but something I do talk about quite a bit is that one, the adaptation to new exercises, okay? So with close grip push-ups, I haven't done them in a long time. And so I'm kind of doing them DC style here, where I'm going to be doing my main set, then I rest. They say 12 to 15 breaths. For most people, that's probably about 40, 45 seconds, okay? And then I do my second set, rest again, third set. Those 3 together went up by about 9 reps from one workout to the next because it's so new. And I see this all the time with people who program hop and they change exercises constantly. They think that they're making all this progress. They're tricking themselves that they're making all this progress, when in reality, you have a huge adaptation to new exercises, even simple exercises. I think I mentioned on a podcast before that I was doing standing alternating dumbbell curls for a long time. I switched to seated. I dropped the weight because I was more strict. I went 6 months of progressing, 1 rep here, 1 rep there, add 2.5 pounds, 6 months of progress on that exercise. I then went back to standing at the old weight that I was using, the heavier weight. I didn't increase a single rep. Actually, I think I went down a rep or 2 because I just wasn't, even though it's a minor change, I just wasn't used to that different form. So new exercise is huge, and why it's so important to try to keep form constant if you're truly measuring progress. The second is just the adaptation of your body to maintain homeostasis after you've been at a certain weight for a long time. I've mentioned that I've been at 195 for a long time, or more or less. I've been between 190 and 197 for quite a while, dipping into the 180s when I want to be a little bit leaner, but I've been at that weight for a long time. And something that happens to a lot of people is you see a lot of people who are obese who feel like they don't eat that much because their hunger signals are through the roof. You see a lot of skinny people who think they eat whatever they want and they can eat so much because they are constantly full because they just don't have that much of an appetite. But what really is happening a lot of the time is it's not these major differences in metabolism, it's these cues that your body is giving you. And so even though I feel like I've been eating way more and I'm stuffing my face with even pretty calorically dense foods, I feel like, man, I must be eating 500 calories more per day, but I keep track of all of it and I can see I'm almost barely eating more. I'm only a pound or two heavier. I'm eating maybe 200 calories more per day on average, if even that, but my body is fighting it. And I think back, man, how was I even 220 at one point? And this is from somebody who grew up as a fat kid, but with the added activity, the added muscle mass that I have now, it's actually hard for me to get above 200 pounds. Whereas previous in my life, it was quite easy to be overweight and over fat. So just an interesting point on the adaptations that I'm noticing doing this at an older age when I've already built a lot of that muscle mass and I have that base. So anyway, guys, I just wanted to give a little input here on my current goals, what I am doing, and how I plan to achieve that. I'll probably check in a few months here and kind of detail if that goal was achieved and then where I will go from there. So if you like the video, subscribe for more, and I will see you guys next time.